and welcome back to your favorite bedtime story with me, Mrs. Kickstand. We are currently reading Becoming Sister Wives. I know I didn't post one last night. I was too fucking tired, okay? Leave me alone. Leave me alone. We're on chapter 2. We are rereading one chapter every night until the book is complete because half of you wanted it, half of you didn't, and I said I do whatever I want. And because one of the shows that I wanted to cover fell through to the graphic nature, I'll have a video posted tomorrow about it. I'm going through this book. So we are on chapter 2 of the matrimony portion, and it's Janelle and Cody. So it's from the point of view of Janelle, and it's from the point of view of Cody. So we're starting with Janelle. I grew up in Bountiful, Utah, and was raised in the LDS faith. My mother had met some Mormon missionaries while in college, and after she graduated, having converted to Mormonism, she moved to Utah to be with others of her faith. My father died when I was 2 years old, and my mother remarried, but my stepfather was not a hands-on father. He was distant and emotionally unavailable. Eventually, my mother divorced him. I knew when I got married and had children of my own that I would look for a man who would be intimately engaged in every aspect of our children's lives. One of the things instilled in you if you grow up LDS is that you are living the only true faith. Nothing else will get you to eternal exaltation. I'm not religious. Towards the end of high school, I met a student named Adam, with whom I was quite taken. I knew he was a Mormon, which meant we had no hope of being together unless he converted. I called my grandmother and told her about the boy I had a crush on. She recognized his name and remembered that his family had at one time lived next door to her. They're in the clan, my grandmother told me. Many of my relatives are still down south. And to Southerners, there is only one clan. That's literally what it says. Can you see it? Okay. Great. I was shocked and told my grandmother so. My reaction made her laugh. They're not in that clan, my grandmother explained. They're polygamists. Until my grandmother told me this, I had no idea polygamists actually existed, let alone lived among us. I had grown up in the LDS Church of Utah, but I was unaware that there was such a thing as polygamy. I thought it was a myth or something from the early days of Mormonism, an old-fashioned tradition that had long since been abandoned. Adam was not completely committed to his fundamentalist faith, and I was happy to welcome him to the LDS Church. Not long after he converted, we began courting. Soon we were married in the temple, but my husband wasn't really interested in either his new faith or the branch of fundamentalism he had been raised in. In fact, he had very little spiritual conviction. His family, however, fascinated me. I would tell my friends my in-laws are polygamists. I was proud to know people in a subculture. They were a novelty. For those who don't know, Adam is Mary's brother. One of the reasons I was so transfixed by Adam's relatives was that they were so outwardly normal. In fact, they were completely conventional and contemporary. They didn't live behind closed doors or practice any strange customs. They worked. They participated in the community. They sent their kids to local schools. My in-laws didn't dress strangely, as some fundamentalist sects did. The women were strong and independent and had an equal say in family affairs with their husbands. If only I'd been as enamored with my husband as I was with his family. Unfortunately, Adam and I had problems right from the start. We weren't spiritually, emotionally, or romantically compatible. We lived together for only 6 months before he moved out. Although my husband and I had separated, I remained close to his family, including Adam's sister Mary. Little did I know how close we'd eventually become. At first, I have to admit it was the novelty that drew me to them, but then I began to feel emotionally invested in them. I enjoyed their large gatherings and the complex and generous notion of family that they presented. At the time, Adam's father had 4 wives and too many children to count. Some were adults like my husband, and some were still in elementary school. Adam's parents went out of their way to include me in their events and to make me feel welcome in their lives. Their group was close-knit and inviting. Even though I was still a member of the LDS Church, I was always welcome to attend their religious gatherings. One evening, they invited me to a fireside presentation, which is an informal spiritual get-together. My ex-husband's sister, Mary, was there. Since I had married her brother, I was friendly with Mary. I knew that she was dating a young man, Cody Brown, with whom she was clearly smitten. So for anybody who says that Janelle cheated on her ex-husband with Cody, it's not true. They got divorced before, any of that. Although Mary talked about Cody a great deal, I had never met him. That evening, when Cody walked into the house to join the party, the strangest feeling washed over me. I felt as I had forgotten something and suddenly remembered it. It was a feeling of relief and recognition, but I was in the middle of a horrible divorce, and I had no idea how to handle the sensation Cody's entrance conjured in me. So I packed it away and made a mental note to deal with it later. My divorce was not yet finalized, so I still attended certain functions with my estranged husband. One of these was Mary and Cody's wedding. If you look at their wedding pictures, you will see me and my ex-husband in several of the photos. Cody and Mary made a wonderful couple. They were so young and so much in love. They were like teenagers, silly and goofy. At their wedding, I never imagined that one day I'd join their family. In fact, I hadn't yet considered converting to their faith. A little more than a year after my own wedding, my divorce was finalized. My husband lost touch with me and spent very little time with his family. But I grew closer to my former in-laws. I entered their family by marriage and stayed when the marriage was over. Now it's from the point of view of Cody. Even when Mary and I were newlyweds, entering the principle of plural marriage was always at the back of our minds. I had a sense in my heart that this was something I needed to do when I was young. I had seen older men marrying women who had children by their first husbands. I didn't think that I should or could bring other people's children into my life and merge my family with someone else's. Interesting. At the time, I felt that this would be disruptive to the children and uncomfortable for the ex-husband. After Mary and I were married, Janelle was often on the periphery of our lives. We both knew that Janelle had endured a rough period during her short-lived marriage, and we wanted to make sure that she remained close with Mary's family despite the divorce. We, as well as Mary's parents, were looking out for Janelle purely because we cared about her. There was never any thought in my mind, or in Mary's, of Janelle becoming a wife. Mary and I often invited Janelle out for pizza or a movie. The women had developed a friendship of their own, independent of Mary's brother. And through Mary, I got to know Janelle. Our friendship was entirely platonic, but I recognized Janelle's intelligence, and conversation always flowed easily between us. Janelle has always been career-minded. When I first met her, she worked in the marketing communications, but then she switched to human resources at an employment agency. I always seemed to be working transitory jobs. Mary and I were still living our carefree existence and hadn't settled on a logical career path. After Mary and I had been married for 3 months, I went looking for a new job. I went to the employment agency where Janelle worked. She helped me out, first with a few part-time positions and eventually with a full-time job in sales. One afternoon, I had to stop by Janelle's office to pick up a check. I passed by her desk to say hello. A quick hello turned into a long conversation. Janelle was very forthcoming about her life. She complained about guys she was dating, about how immature and unsatisfactory they were. Immediately, a thought popped into my head. Janelle should marry a guy like me. I thought I was the perfect solution to Janelle's problem. Back then, I was young and arrogant. I was also naive. I thought that I was everything Janelle was looking for. A few months later, Mary and I were getting ready to move from Utah to Wyoming to be close to my family. Mary, Janelle, and I had spent some time together and gotten to know one another even better. In fact, Mary and I were even renting Janelle's old house for a while. I wanted to see Janelle once more before we moved away, so I invited her to lunch with me. Technically, it's inappropriate for a married man to have lunch alone with another woman, but Janelle and I were friends. There was no thought of courting, so lunch was purely platonic. But during that lunch, the same thought that I had had a few months earlier in Janelle's office crossed my mind. There was something between Janelle and me. I was a married man, so I had to be careful with my words. I tried to be as offhand as possible when I said to Janelle, maybe you and I should consider you and me. Go to part 2.